Okay, today we are working on volume of rectangular prisms. You can see that because we're doing lesson 12 that we have skipped over several lessons. If we have additional time later in the year, we'll come back and look at some of this, but for right now, we needed to move on to volume. So the formula for volume equals the length times the width times the height. So we're multiplying those three numbers together. So when you look at the pictures that we have here, we have the length, we have the width, and we have the height. So when it asks us on part A to write a numerical expression for the volume of each of the rectangular prisms above, I'm going to do it right below each one. So for the first one, 15 times 1.5 times 3, the length times the width times the height. For the middle one, 15 times 1.5 times 6. And for the last one, 15 times 1.5 times 9. So it asked for the numerical expression. It did not ask for me to solve them. Question B says, what do all of these expressions have in common and what do they represent? And so all of them have the first part of the problem that is the same. They all have 15 times 1.5. And then it says, what do they represent? And so if you look at where those are on the picture, you can see that they represent the base of the figure, the part it's sitting on. So they represent the base of the 3D figure. And I should say that is the area of the base. Okay, part C says rewrite the numerical expressions, they're referring to the ones in part A, to show what they have in common. So take your calculator and multiply 15 times 1.5. Okay, so when you multiplied 15 times 1.5, you get 22.5. So that is our base. And so to find the volume in the first figure, the area of the base is 22.5 inches squared, and I would multiply that times the height. And in the next one, the area of the base, 22.5 inches squared, times a height of 6. And on the last one, the area of the base, 22.5 times a height of 9. And it says if we know the volume of a rectangular prism as length times width times height, that's a formula we wrote at the top of the page, what is another formula for volume that we could use based on these examples? And that formula is the area of the base times the height. The capital B represents the area of the base. So it's not a lowercase b, which is a straight line, like we looked at with our parallelograms and our triangles. Part E just reviews, it says what is the area of the base of each of those figures, and we got 22.5 inches squared. Hi, at the top of the next page, question F says determine the volume for each rectangular prism using either method. So we're going to use what we've already set up. So for the first one, you can plug into your calculator 15 times 1.5 times 3, or you can do the 22.5 times 3. So on your calculator, when you have that done, you get 67.5, and because it is volume, it is not squared, but it is cubed. We multiplied 3 numbers to get it. It is a 3D figure, so it is cubed. There's a little 3 after the inches. On the second one, we had 15 times 1.5 times 6, or the second way we wrote it, we went ahead and found the area of the base, and so that volume is 135 inches cubed. For the last one, the volume was 15 times 1.5 times 9, or 22.5 times 9, and that volume is 202.5 inches cubed. Question G says, how do the volumes of the first and second rectangular prisms compare? And then the volumes of the first and the third. So from the first to the second, if you look at the 67.5 and the 135, the height doubled, and they had the same base. Because they had the same base and the height doubled, it's like having 2 of picture number 1 stacked one on top of the other, so it doubled. And we're going from the first one to the third one, they have the same base, and because the base was the same, I look at the height, and in the original one the height was 3, and in the last one the height was 9, so the height tripled. Because my base is the same, it's like taking 3 of the first one and stacking them on top of each other, and so it tripled in volume. All right, so now let's look at example 2. Okay, in example 2, it says the base of a rectangular prism has an area of 3 1/4 inches squared. The height of the prism is 2.5 inches. Determine the volume of the rectangular prism. So in this picture, they did not tell us the length or the width. They just had gone ahead and figured out the area of the base. So I drew a picture, kind of shaded where that area would be, and labeled it. Our height is 2.5 inches. So to find our volume, we have 2 formulas to choose from. We could do length times width times height, or we can do the area of the base times the height. So I want you to think about what they gave us and which of those 2 formulas would work. Because we don't know the length and the width, we need to choose this formula. So we plug into that formula, volume equals the area of the base, 3 1/4, times the height, 2 1/2, and when we multiply those together, all right, so grab your calculators. Nope, I just did hit the wrong button on my calculator, so I'm redoing mine. Some of you may still be looking for yours. All right, so we get 8 1/8. And it is inches cubed, because now that I have volume, it is cubed. Okay, down at the bottom of the page, we have an extension problem. In the extension problem, a company is creating a rectangular prism that must have a volume of 6 feet cubed. The company also knows the area of the base, which must be 2.5 feet. How can you use what you've learned today about volume to determine the height of the rectangular prism? So if I think about the two equations I have for volume, one is length times width times height, and the other one is base times height, I'm going to want to use volume equals base times height, because I know the base, I don't know the length and the width. So in this one, we know the volume is 6, so I'm going to plug that in for V, and the area of the base is 2.5, but I don't know the height, so times H. So now that I have that set up, it's a multiplication equation. Opposite of multiplication is division, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2.5. Okay, so grab your calculator. 6 divided by 2.5. Okay, and when you do that, you get 2 2/5. Okay, and my label for that is going to be feet. It is a straight line measurement, so it does not get squared or cubed. Okay, go ahead and get started on your problem set.